Welcome to this session about Startup Europe for Growth and Innovation Radar. This session is one of the sessions in the work program line of track in the program, and we will talk about these Startup Europe and Innovation Radar calls that we have coming up. Actually, they are now open and they will be closed in March. To give you a little bit more substance on what these calls are about and who are the people that we are looking for to collaborate and work with in this program. So I'm Helen KÖPMAN. I'm a deputy head of unit in the DG Connect unit for digital innovation and blockchain. And I have my colleague here, Eoghan O'Neill, who will also step in and speak to you about specifically about the Innovation Radar. This is also part of a track in the conference where we are focusing on startups and innovation from the Horizon 2020 programs. And as you may have seen out here when you came to the room, there is a whole village, Startup and Innovation Village out there, with stands of innovators, startups that are coming out from the research projects. There are our stakeholders and collaborators that are interested in the outcomes of these projects, such as investors, European Investment Bank, business angels, and other parties that will be interested in these results. So we want everyone actually to get together in this village and start making connections. But back to our call. So this arrow normally makes it go ahead. And where will I point it? There we go. I'm back. Okay. Here, first of all, just an overview of the Startup Europe initiative as one of the part of this call. So Startup Europe is about connecting local startup ecosystem and their players to enhance the competitiveness of these ecosystems around Europe and to make the people that are in the ecosystems, the startups and the entrepreneurs, reach more international markets. And in this path that they would actually grow. One of the things that we have concentrated on lately in Startup Europe is to more on the growth phase of the company. So although we're not turning our eye away from the startup, we actually think that the most important part now is to focus on the growth segment. We will continue to encourage startup creation, but we will focus on that to help the companies actually reach scale in Europe, which is one of the weaknesses that we have identified. Another thing that we are concentrating on is the deep tech verticals in these calls. We have in Europe very broad and deep strength in certain areas, and as we have seen, maybe some of you have picked up the Atomicus State of the Tech in Europe report that came out yesterday in another conference in Slush, which is, again, highlighting the very big strength in Europe that we have around deep tech verticals in areas such as artificial intelligence, blockchain, cybersecurity, high-performance computers, and so on. With this program, we also want to give more visibility to European entrepreneurs that are successful and their success stories. It's very important, actually, this networking aspect between the ecosystems, because we understand that there are very many, actually, startup hubs with individual strength and also international reach. But we think that the European startup ecosystem as a whole will be much stronger if they work together and get better connected in between themselves and can start making businesses in between themselves that makes the European market stronger. In Startup Europe, the next 2 years, we have actually 10 projects ongoing. Some of the project members I can see are here that are actually in these projects. And these projects we have divided them here into two different groups on how sort of they're focused in their project objectives. And this is just to give you an example of what's already ongoing. And of course, we want to build on this, these projects and what they have achieved, but we also want to go further. We don't want to do more of the same. We want to go further in the areas that I indicated, so more deep tech, more growth, and more connectedness and so on. So we have people that concentrate on perhaps putting startups in contact with investors. We have some projects focusing on startups getting access to international markets in Europe and beyond. And we have some projects that are actually focusing on the Eastern Europe part of area and connecting Eastern Europe with perhaps ecosystems that are a bit more mature to help everyone become stronger together. And you can see a bit of the figures here on outcomes or outputs of these projects. So we're interconnecting more than 20 EU hubs as it looks today. These projects will target something like 3,400 startups with their activity, providing them services, and involving also corporate and investors on the way. So how do we get these activities together? One way we put this information together is what we call the Startup Europe One-Stop Shop. All the projects that are ongoing are advertised there, and more than that, the project's activities. So if the project has calls for proposals or calls for expression of interest in their activities, they will also be advertised there. It's very important to actually get the startups that you may be in contact with to go to this site and have a look at what's going on. We are planning now also a complete revamp of this portal and make it even more efficient and more interesting and dynamic. So it's directed both to startups that wants to get involved in these projects that are ongoing and to the ecosystem builders that actually reach out to these startups. And in this network of projects that are ongoing in Startup Europe, we have 24 countries represented and ambassadors in each of these countries and their ecosystem. As I said, these ambassadors are participating in the Startup Europe projects, and they know very well about the activities and can explain to the startups around Europe how to get access. All the names of these ambassadors are advertised on the Startup Europe Club website, so you can get in contact with the people behind. Now, over to you, Eoghan.
Thank you, Helen. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Eoghan O'Neill, DG Connect. I'm working in the Digital Innovation and Blockchain unit with Helen. I want to talk to you today about the innovation radar side of this ICT33 call. But before doing so, I want to just give you a quick overview of what the radar is, what we are trying to do, and then focusing in on specifically what's being called for in ICT33. I pressed a button, hang on. There we go, that's what I want you to see. There's 3 verbs on this slide that capture what we are trying to do with Innovation Radar. Identify, champion, and support. Excellent innovators in Horizon 2020. The identification happens, we have a data-driven model where we capture signals about the innovative output of the EU-funded projects under Horizon 2020. We use the intelligence, those data, to champion, and there's going to be a lot of championing happening here at ICT2018, even today in this room. I'll come back to that later. And then support. We've got running support actions at the moment. We're also using, such as EARSUS and Merlin, I will come to those in a moment. We're also using other support tools of the European Commission, the Startup Europe Network, the European Enterprise Network, to ensure that support gets to those innovators in Horizon 2020 who are facing innovative opportunities, market opportunities. So identify, champion, and support. And the support dimension is something we're specifically calling for in ICT33, but I'll come back to details of that in a moment. I show you this slide here because one of the things we are doing, we are securing from the data and the signals we gather is the ability to categorize every innovation coming out of an EU-funded research and innovation project in terms of its market maturity. In the top right hand, automatically, with the data, with this method developed by the Joint Research Centre of the European Commission, we can identify at one extreme those innovations that are in effect ready for market. This optimization category you see in the top right-hand corner. And at the other extreme, we have those who are still exploring, getting things started, trying to push the scientific and technological envelope, and in between these other two categories. But what I want from you to take from this is that for the first time in the history of the Framework Programme, we have the ability to mechanically categorize what's coming out of the projects in terms of market maturity. I mentioned support, the verb. Here are two support actions we launched in January of this year. They'll be running for one more year, Merlin and Irsus. They are offering services to innovators, funded by Horizon 2020, with a strong focus on ICT, be they SMEs, startups, spin-offs, university teams, research teams, to help them with the steps from the laboratory closer and ideally into the marketplace. That could be support in terms of developing a business model, developing a marketing strategy, finding a first customer, preparing to pitch to investors. Moving on. Now, that's great, European Commission, wow, you've got all this data, super duper, could we have access to it? And yes, indeed, and this year we launched the Innovation Radar platform to give the public access to insights about the intelligence, about the of innovations coming out of the Framework Programme. Browser-based experience or smartphone app, Google or Apple stores. Familiarize yourself with it, and this in effect is our MVP. We're on the basis of user feedback, we're improving this platform so that it becomes more useful for its growing user base. Now, championing, to champion, the verb that I had on that first slide there about the radar. One of our key vehicles for championing is the Innovation Radar Prize scheme. This is where we skim off the creme de la creme from those innovations we're discovering through the Innovation Radar platform. We put them, so this year we had 50 finalists over 5 categories that went to a public vote at the beginning of November. And over a period of 2 weeks, the public voted for what they considered to be the most impressive innovators in each category. So with 10 in each category, the voting got us down to 4. So we now have 20 who have gone to the final stage, which is here today, this afternoon, in this room, where the 20 finalists in these 5 categories will be pitching to a jury of investors and people from the startup ecosystem. They'll be pitching their innovation, funded by the EU, their plans to get it to market, and they have 3 minutes to do so. So it starts at 2 o'clock. Next slide. Here we are. These are the finalists across the 5 categories: best early stage innovation, industrial and enabling technology, best young SME, excellent science, and tech for society. Based on the pitches they will deliver here from this podium later today, the jury will choose 1 winner in each, and then the jury will choose 1 overall Grand Prix winner. The winners will be announced tomorrow in the closing plenary by Commissioner Maria Gabriel. It's here. Do come, bring your friends. If you want to see excellence in the programme, there is no better place to be than in this room this afternoon. And you will see some genuinely inspiring innovators with some truly groundbreaking innovations who will be in 3 minutes trying to convince you and the jury members of how deserving they are of this prize. One thing of note, I mentioned that there was 20 finalists. I'd like to highlight that the 25%, I was very curious to see, 25% of those finalists come from what we call the EU 13 countries, those member states that joined the European Union in 2004 or later. And this is after such aggressive screening to find the 50 finalists, and then the public voting, that 25% should come from the EU 13, I think is an interesting signal of the excellence that is to be found in those EU 13 countries, and something I think that is something you should keep in mind, those of you who are here in Vienna in these days with a view to constructing future consortia that want to deliver excellence. I think I stop here and hand back to Helen, yes. Thanks for your time. I'll be here for questions, and over to Helen. Oh, you got the microphone thing.
Yeah. Thanks, Eoghan. I think then perhaps you have understood that in this call we actually have a dual objective. One is to reach out to the startup through the ecosystem builders in Europe, and one is actually to harvest what we have inside the house in Horizon 2020 through the Innovation Radar. So we are not letting any of these potential innovators alone. I mean, we want to reach out to all of them. What we have achieved already with Innovation Radar is I think, first time in the history of the work programs and Horizon 2020 and previous framework programs that we actually are collecting data about the projects and their impact and the potential on the market. So this is quite new. And what we also want to do with the call is to find synergies between these two areas. So if Startup Europe projects and any other projects that offer services have things that matches to the needs of the innovators that we have detected through the Innovation Radar, that would be great for us. That would be quite an achievement. So this is something that we really want to achieve with this call. So now back to the basics, what the call is about. Of course, you can see all of this on the participant portal and dig into the text and so on, but I will try to dissecate this a bit with you and with Eoghan so you understand what we're looking for. So it's two parts. One is innovation actions. As you know, innovation actions are grants that we fund up to 70% of the value of the objective of the projects. And the innovation actions are focusing on Startup Europe activities that I mentioned previously, so ecosystem builders and the services to the startups. The budget for this is 10 million euros. And then we have the coordination support action, which is funded to 100% of the project value, and that activity is focusing on the Innovation Radar activities. So, and the budget for that is 1.5 million, just so you know. And the call is already open. The deadline is the 28th of March next year at 5 o'clock p.m. So, Startup Europe, what are we looking for? To a little bit reiterate what we already said, it's about connecting startup ecosystems. And specifically, we want to connect about 4 or 5 startup ecosystems together that should support cross-border activities. And we want these projects to focus on deep tech verticals, such as artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, blockchain, Internet of Things, 5G, whatever you find that there's value and we need to bring up and support these technologies in their growth in Europe. We also want to bridge the maturing and the matured ecosystem. So continue on the activity we actually have now, reaching out to Central and Eastern Europe and the Western Balkans, by the way, and bridge these ecosystems together to make them stronger, working together. Now, you can ask yourself, what is a matured and what is not a matured? I mean, this is, of course, a matter of opinion and subjectivity, but we have tried to make it a bit more in a way that we would like to interpret this for this call, which might be right or wrong, but this is an indication that we can use the Digital City Index, which was actually one of the deliverables of a previous project. We can use this for illustration. So the top 20 of that Digital City Index score ranking would be considered matured, and the others not matured, just as an indication. But of course, we understand the intent. The intent is really just to make bridges between the ecosystems. So cross-border activities, we just mentioned a few in this call. There could be others, but we think that we probably will see things like connecting deep tech entrepreneurs with potential investors, business partners, or accessing skills around Europe, helping startups soft land in markets in Europe and internationally. And then us finding partnerships between scale-ups and the corporates, which is one of the projects running right now is doing as well. And we think that this is a very important activity. I know this is happening anyway around Europe, and it's something we really would like to support. This could be with the view of actually getting the corporates buying services from the startup or acquiring them at the end. Another feature that is new for this call is we actually want to have access to public procurement for startups. This is another avenue, I would say, that startups can use to grow. So one would be, of course, just natural growth. One would be finding investors. But of course, very important is to find the customers. I think this is the best way for startup to grow is to find customers. And these customers can actually be found in public administrations. So it could be very interesting for startups to get access to these opportunities. It's one of the activities we would like to see. I already spoke about the single entry point. We think that these ecosystem builders could be single entry points in their ecosystems and then linking them together in the Startup Europe one-stop shop. Just checking time here, we're good. Wow, innovation radar. What are we looking for, Eoghan?
Thank you. Thanks, Helen. Innovation radar. What I have put on this slide here is a direct copy and paste from the work program. A few things, I'm not going to walk through every single word on that slide now. You'll be delighted to hear, okay? But I want to highlight a few things. There's 3 dimensions we are calling for. In effect, one is providing targeted and tailored support. Go back to that verb I spoke of earlier, support, which is key. The second one, enhancement. You know, looking for imaginative, creative, pragmatic ways that we could enhance the existing platform and data sets we have, because we are under no illusions that what we are doing, how we are doing it is perfect. We do, however, sense that there is an opportunity to enhance the platform by, for example, merging with relevant third-party data sources. And so that second dimension, point B, is enhancement. Some solid, good ideas that can enhance our platform, the intelligence it offers, for example, through the merging with all third-party data sources. And then the third point is this, defining the different sort of support that we're seeking: mentoring, coaching, investor readiness. Now, a point I want to underline here is no given proposal is obliged to cover all 3 points. A proposal can, in terms of its ambition and its scope, try to address all 3 points. But it is not a requirement and obligation to do so. Oh yeah, and the formatting in green is not in the work program. That was me taking a bit of creative license to highlight something that we sense is interesting and an opportunity. But key message, no proposal is not expected to cover all 3 points. Yes, and it's a support action, 100% funded. I think that's all I want to say for now. And I think I will hand back to Helen. But I am here for questions, be it now, during the day, and also tomorrow. Okay, thank you. Helen, back to you.
Thank you. Let's move on then. Okay, I think that's what we said, what we wanted. What do we not want with these activities? Just our examples. We want to go further in the activities we have and make them better, but we do not want to work with projects that do not link into startup ecosystem players for the Startup Europe activities, because it's very important to have direct hands-on and knowledge and contact with these people. We don't particularly want projects that focus on developing tools, because we have a lot of tools around. We should make use of the tools we have instead. We also think that the size of the projects could be around 4 or 5 ecosystem connecting together, and it shouldn't be too much more and too much less, because then you don't have the critical mass. And we also want these activities to focus on making the European ecosystem stronger in Europe, whereas, of course, by doing that, we need to reach out internationally, give them these projects growth opportunity internationally, but the focus and the weight should be in Europe. I'd just like to highlight quickly here 2 other calls that are actually open right now, and there might be startups here that, like, now we're talking about calls. Somebody has to submit the proposal. The project will start next year, so what's in it for me now? This is a couple things that you can find right now that is this interesting opportunities open as we speak. This in an area that is adjacent to ours in Startup Europe and Innovation Radar, which is called Next Generation Internet, and there are other sessions here talking about this, but I just might mention this specific thing. In these calls, there are then project coordinators and projects that are announcing opportunities that are open directly now for in these three areas. So discovery of identification technologies, privacy and trust enhancing technologies, and decentralized data governance. These are small projects that are supposed to be agile and very focused. So it's not a grant, as I spoke about earlier. These are smaller grants, I would say, between 50,000 and 200,000 that would be given out to participants that would focus on these specific areas. And they are targeted to startups and SMEs, smaller projects with a shorter span of time, so 9 to 12 months, really targeting to the internet innovators, the high-tech startups and SMEs in this area. So it's very also, you can say, connected to the activities we do in the area of blockchain, which is the next opportunity that I would like to announce to you, which is this Inducement Prize. Actually, this is something you could talk about, right? Do you want to talk about this?
Why not?
Yeah? Because it's in your area.
Sorry about this is an Inducement Prize, which is actually one of the innovations in Horizon 2020 from the Commission's point of view. It's a new instrument in our toolbox that we simply did not have before Horizon 2020. And in fact, this is, if you wish, the traditional world of the framework program turned upside down. Traditionally is we have our work program text, we say what we would like proposals to focus on, proposals are received, evaluated, the best gets the money, does the work. Here, an Inducement Prize is absolutely that world upside down. We say, here's a major challenge we want to have addressed. Please, dear community of innovators and researchers, go and solve it. When you have solved it, come back to us with your solution. If it's the best solution we receive, you get a big prize pot of money. So basically we're saying, big carrot, big pot, in this case, €1 million, to go and do something really, really cool, ambitious, groundbreaking that has not been done before. And when you've done it, you're going to get a massive prize as a recompense for that effort. So it's, and the thing is, this instrument is actually really working. We've been getting multiple solutions to problems that have been done at own cost by various researchers around Europe. And here is one example of an Inducement Prize contest under Horizon 2020 that is open at the moment, Blockchains for Social Good. We've got 5 times €1 million for excellent decentralized solutions based on blockchain technologies to tackle social innovation challenges. Deadline, beginning of April 2019. That's for registering your interest and intention to participate. But no guarantee that you are going to win. But what we are seeing is this new model is actually very effective in driving, motivating, inducing a community of excellent researchers and innovators to come up with solutions to vital, interesting, and important challenges out there. So please dig in, on the Horizon Prizes webpage into the rules for participation and so forth, and get to understand what we're trying to achieve here. There are very generous prize funds, as you can see, on offer for those who are successful in delivering something compelling and something new. So, voila, yeah, the Inducement Prizes, blockchains. Helen, tag team, back you go.
Okay, good, thank you. Now we have talked a lot here, so I think we should give an opportunity for you, anyone here that has questions about what we just have discussed. Is anyone in the audience willing to? Yeah, here we have a question. How many projects? Yeah, so we have how many projects will be funded with Innovation Actions? The Innovation Action is the Startup Europe part, is 10 million euros. We're thinking about the size of the projects. We don't want to give a very hard indication here because it's depending on what the project will do. But as I said, right now we have something like, we have 8 projects working specifically in this area with the same amount of budget. So that's about the size. Yes? No, I mean, as we said, there's one project within this set of projects that actually particularly targets Eastern Europe, Central and Eastern Europe, and in its prolongation, the Western Balkans. And then, of course, the countries that are associated to Horizon 2020 framework program, they can participate as any other participant in the program. So if there would be an association agreement with a country, they could participate on that basis. Otherwise, linking into the EU members in the projects which are fully funded. Yeah.
I have a question related to the link to the digital innovation hubs. How do you see the collaboration? So what are the exact outcomes you're expecting? Micro projects where all startups are, where they're working with the digital innovation hubs in their region? So what is exactly at the operational level, how the collaboration should take place? That's my...
We said in the call that we seek synergies with the digital innovation hubs. Indeed, thank you for raising that question. So we should do that when it makes sense. So these digital innovation hubs that you might have seen have very different focus. Some of them are also concentrating on deep tech verticals that we also are interested in. So it could make sense if these hubs are reaching out to the ecosystems around and the startups around. Why not collaborate with those where it makes sense? But it doesn't mean that every project has to have a link to digital innovation hubs. It's only when it is good for the project. Yes.
What are the outcomes then in that case? If you want to link with that,
yes.
What are the type of outcomes you're expecting?
Yeah, I understand. What are the type of outcomes? I mean, the hubs, for example, are giving capacity, are offering capacity in certain technology areas for SMEs to, for example, test services, test products. This could be very interesting in a growth strategy for a startup that has a project that needs to further testing or simulation, that give them access to this sort of capacity. I think that could be a sensible way of looking at it. Any other questions? Yeah, another one.
Yeah, we were wondering, what do you mean with public procurement actions?
Yeah. Yes, it does merit a bit more explanation. I think we have an activity in our portfolio projects called Innovation+Procurement, and we have identified that the public procurement opportunities is not fully exploited for startups. Startups might find it a bit difficult to actually, first of all, understand how do you apply for a public procurement. It is a bit of a cumbersome process sometimes. Actually, even finding the information or finding startups that have done it before could be something that these projects could consider doing, because it is, we have found that if the startups get access to public procurement and can use the public administration as its first customer, could be an incredible path to growth for a company. So this could make much sense in certain cases. Okay, here's a question at the end. And then we will wrap up, because we have a grand opening coming up.
You said there are 3 topics in the coordination and support action, Innovation Radar, but they are not mandatory. However, the budget will go to only 1 project, if I understood well. Which would be the priority of the 3 topics?
The budget, the indicative budget for the support actions relating to Innovation Radar, we deliberately don't say this is for 1, 2, or 3 or whatever projects. Let me give you, just if you look backwards, I mentioned the 2 support actions we have running now. When we called for those a few years ago, we had a budget of €1 million, and we secured 2 very good quality proposals that are now running. Irsus and Merlin, a budget of €500,000 more or less each, if I'm not mistaken. This time around, it's indicative budget of 1.5. You have proposers interested in this, have a scope to go for something that could be at the 500 end of the scale or even higher up. I do not want to mandate you that one must aim for a single project monolithic of 1.5 million. we've outlined our 3 target areas, and it's a bottom-up process now. We want you to put forward your best possible proposals to address those. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, thank you very much. I think with that, and we will wrap up this work program session on Startup Europe and Innovation Radar, and start the program that we actually will run here the couple next days around the Startup and Innovation Village. And this will be announced by our colleagues. Maybe I can now hand over to Bogdan.